Good morning. Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to Mindset Monday, where independent advocates like us come together to start the week with positivity and inspiration. I'm Nicole Broadhurst, and I'm not here with Kayla this morning. However, we were proactive this week and we recorded the session yesterday. So I'm here. I'm going to share the recording so that you can get all the goodies that we shared yesterday together in the conversation around it. I will be here live so I can answer in the chat. So if you have questions or thoughts or things that you want to share, I'm super excited about that. So just so you know, today we're going to dive into self-awareness, and we have a really positive, powerful quote that will guide us through this conversation. I'm going to do a couple of things. First, I'm going to get out of the way here, and then I'm going to add the recording. And if you give me just a second, I'm going to hit play if I can find it. Maybe. Here we go. Hello.
Hello.
How are you this morning?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to pretend like we haven't already had like an hour-long conversation.
I know, right? Good morning, everybody.
That's right.
Happy Monday, even though it's not Monday for us.
Not Monday. We're recording this, and so that's why we're kind of a little bit weird here, but we've already had this great conversation, and now we're ready to jump into Mindset Monday and share this great quote with you. Kayla, what quote are we talking about today?
So our quote today comes to us from Debbie Ford, and it is, self-awareness is the ability to take an honest look at your life without any attachment to it being right or wrong, good or bad.
Ooh, I love this. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop and take a moment to thank you for creating the pillars for us, because I really feel like they interact with each other and they help us really kind of build on some of the stuff we're talking about. You know, last week we talked about Brene Brown's quote, like, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. And I love that we continued some of this self-discovery stuff. And now we're talking about self-awareness and releasing the judgment around that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really cool. We were talking before we started the recording, we were talking about the journey that we've taken to where we are now, right? And how, man, I wish, Kayla and I were talking about this. We both kind of wish we had gotten to this place in our life like 10, 15 years ago. But then at the same time, we wouldn't give up the experiences of the journey, right? And I think this really kind of encapsulates this quote, right? Like, it's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. It's just the way it is.
And just to clarify what Nicole is saying, not we wish we had gotten to this place with having businesses, but the mindset work that has had to come first. Like I was discussing with Nicole, the mindset that I'm operating in today and that my operating my business requires was not a mindset that was fostered or shared with me. I don't even think I knew the word mindset like throughout like my childhood and my schooling. Like, it's all truly, I've had to do a lot of deprogramming of like deeply held on unconscious beliefs and whatnot to be able to get my mind in a state where I can pursue entrepreneurship and creative thinking and all these other things. So that's what we were sharing, that, you know, I wish I didn't have to go through. It's not the journey. Like, I was so happy that I did go to nursing school and like went through this whole decade long as a nurse and in the bedside in the hospital, all those things. Like, that experience was necessary and I have so much gratitude for it. It's the mindset, like deprogramming, that gets frustrating.
Yeah.
At
And
times.
that deprogramming of, it's so interesting how these two quotes really flow together, because it's the deprogramming of self-judgment, like who I thought I was supposed to be, This is kind of interesting, right? So I thought that in order to be a successful corporate business person, I needed to dress and behave and speak in a certain way. That's and it was so obvious. I talk about this all the time. I know you've heard me talk about it. My teams always knew when somebody from corporate was coming or I was going to corporate, just instantaneously, because that's who I thought I needed to be. And so last week we talked about, letting go of that and focusing and embracing on who I am, who we are. And today, now we're talking about, okay, the next step of that embracing is really about letting go of the judgment.
Well, is it the next step or is it actually the step before? Because if you don't have self-awareness, then you probably don't even realize that you're doing that masking truly of your authentic true self.
True. I guess I'm thinking about the embracing part. Like, I think I've always known, right, that I was out of character in those instances because it felt uncomfortable. So I think even at this basic level, I think my body knew, right, that I was out of alignment, right? So once I was able to say, okay, that's out of alignment for me, the next piece of that is, in order to embrace who I really am, requires me to release those judgments or deprogram, right? Yeah. Like the idea that it's not okay to be as eccentric as I am. And I don't really think, that's not a word I usually use for myself, but I think when I think of myself compared to the corporate stereotype, I definitely feel eccentric to that.
Square peg in a round hole.
right. And so I had to get, figure out, like, how do I embrace that? Requires me to let go of the judgment, good, bad, right, wrong. Like, there is no good, bad, right, wrong, except for how it feels authentically. Anyway, I just think that was really interesting. I was just thinking about how, and I still don't think I've overcome all of that judgment, because there's still moments, right, in life where I'm like, I can't do that. I can't show up that way. I need, and that's not really true. But anyway, probably because mindset is a journey, right?
Yep.
It's not a destination. So
correct.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go there. We'll just be okay with that. I think that, so letting go of judgments, man, I think that as advocates, that really kind of takes things to another level in regards to our clients too, right? Like, how do we help them embrace their unique journey and some of the things that they might be? Anyway, that could get really deep. What do you think about that? I don't know.
I think we took a hard left pretty quick here today.
Yeah. Cool. Me too, because I was feeling that way too. I was feeling like, okay, I don't really want to go there because that's not where we're going. And
they're all tied together though. I mean, that's why they're all under this, umbrella, the pillar system we set up. But
right.
I just want to bring it back. Self-awareness is the ability to take an honest look at your life without any attachment to it being right or wrong, good or bad. So what comes up for me with this is, when you start looking at yourself and you maybe do have these concepts of right, wrong, good, bad, or whatever language you want to put around that.
Yeah.
What that does is it starts to really tie emotion to things. And when you tie, you can be thinking emotionally or you can be thinking rationally, but you can't do both at the same time. And emotion clouds judgment, frankly. And so when you're trying to, and like I don't think anybody ever really wants to bash themselves, So where I'm going with this is, if you're trying to have some self-awareness and perhaps you're having some reflection on a specific incident or something, and you're having this conversation with yourself and looking at your choices, if you allow yourself to bring the emotion in, what you're also inviting in is that any decision that you qualify as bad or wrong, your immediate sense to yourself casting that judgment is going to be defensiveness. And then you're going to start to come up with your reasons why, kind of defending your choices to yourself. But the piece that you're missing here is like, no, you're not persecuting yourself. The whole point of that self-reflection and self-awareness is just to be able to take that data of, what happened from these choices, to be able to make choices that next time that more align with where you're trying to go and who you want to be in that level of self authenticity and moving you forward towards your goals and whatnot. So for me, that's why it comes up, that separation of having the self-awareness without leaving the judgment at the door, to just look at the things for what they are and the consequences that came after that, but without tying the emotion to it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, because like you hear this phrase, I hear this phrase, and it used to really tick me off. There's a lot of things in life that used to tick me off, but this one, it is what it is, right? We've all heard people use the phrase, well, it is what it is. It is what it is,
yeah.
right? And this is why I think about this, is because it is what it is. And to me, when I hear it is what it is, the purpose for that phrase is exactly what you just said, to remove the emotion from it. Like, it just is, right? It's a state of being. It just is. And so this is the thing, the truth, the whatever, the belief, the whatever, the actions, the decisions we've made, they are what they are. But then it needs to follow this next piece, right?
Exactly.
Right. So, okay, that's great. This is what it is. And this is this thing, whatever, choice, decision, whatever. Now, what do we do with that?
Right. And that, you're right. That piece, yeah. You hear that all, it is what it is, that phrase, I feel like, has often just become a justification for a lack of self-awareness and reflection and, attempts to continue personal growth. It
stunts it.
Yeah.
If you stop there, if you stop with just acknowledging the truth, then you stunt the personal and professional, the growth opportunities that are behind that, right? And I agree with you. I think that society, generally speaking, throws that out there when they're waving their white flag.
Yeah. And that, right? So truly, Mindset Monday is a conversation and not just a list of quotes, because there's so many like well-used phrases or quotes that like the pendulum could swing both directions. But I'm trying to think of another. Gratitude is another one that like, there is such a thing as toxic positivity. And let me share this with you if you don't understand what I'm saying.
Yes, come on, I agree.
The following information may be sensitive to some viewers. So almost 2 years ago now, I, without knowing that anything was wrong, showed up to an ultrasound to find out that my daughter that we were expecting was no longer with us. And it was a very, very traumatic event for me, for my family. It was also the day before Thanksgiving. Like, the timing, phenomenal. And as I was going through my grief, one thing that helped me so much was that my son at the time was 2.5, and I had to take care of him. There was like, I could only sink so far into my grief before he needed a nap, needed a cuddle, needed dinner, and he was he didn't know what was going on. So like he was still cracking jokes and, being silly. And he was such a bright light during such a dark time for me and my husband. And while we were grieving the loss of our daughter, we were so grateful to have our son to help us through that. I had a family member who, through a text message, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. You should just be grateful you have a child." I'm sorry. That is toxic positivity. Why, yes, I am grateful and I am grieving the loss that has just happened to me. Two things can be true at the same time. So that's the example that pops to mind, where you can take something that is so essential and beautiful and pure and important to mindset, and you can really adulterate it. So it all depends on kind of intention and the mindset you have around things.
Right. Which is why we do this. Right? Which is why we talk about this, because this is stuff like, I don't know. I don't hear a ton of people talking about this on a regular basis in a conversational way where we're really just trying to apply the theories to real life. Like, how are we going to use this week to make sure that I am staying unattached, without judgment, in my self-awareness? And how is that going to make my life better, my client's life better, my family's life better? Like, these are real things. And this is why I love what you just said, is that we have these quotes, these mindset theories that become overused, and which is one of the reasons we don't choose those quotes for this conversation. We like to pick the ones that are, just
maybe we would, though, so that we can pick it apart and like bring back, some of the positivity and highlight some of the negativity. Because I mean, before I started really digging into this mindset work, I would hear some of these things and I could tell it didn't sit right with me, but I couldn't like put words around why.
Right.
So that actually, now that you say that might be helpful. We could do a whole little mini series on overused phrases that have now like lost their value because they have been adulterated. I really feel like is the right word.
It is right. It is right. And also because, well, anyway, I think that's a great idea. Let's put that on our to-do list and see what happens. Yeah, put a pin on that, put it in the parking lot. Let's see what happens with it. So if you guys don't have enough stuff in your parking lot, then you're missing out on opportunities. Anyway, that one's in our parking lot. We'll see what we can do with that. I love the idea of letting go of judgment, because the truth is, I can only do what I can do today with the information, experience, and knowledge that I have today. Like, I can't do any better or any worse, right? Like, it's just impossible. And so when I think about life that way, it really allows me to not beat myself up about yesterday, to not like overdo the future. It just, we were talking earlier about me populating some of the quotes to get us out. And that had nothing to do with our plan or our work together or anything like that. You know what it had to do with? It had to do with me. And what I needed that day when I populated that is I needed to release anxiety. And that was my mechanism. And it literally really reflected nothing about anything else. And I think sometimes we forget that, when we live in the moment, that's what we're doing, right? We're in the moment. This is what I need right now. And so this is what I'm going to do right now to take care of myself, and this is all don't judge. And that's hard for me, Kayla. I'm going to kind of be transparent, because when we talk about that, I do have a little bit of guilt that creeps up onto my shoulder that says, you shouldn't have done that, Nicole. That was overstepping boundaries. Like, you shouldn't have done that, Nicole. Like, all of these things. And so
don't be shitting on yourself.
I know, right? This is the whole thing. And this is why I'm sharing it here, is because that's real. And my mindset is such that I have to be okay. There was no malicious intent in that. There was no motivation other than release this anxiety that I'm having. Period. That was the end of it. So not judging myself for that is an ongoing process, right? And being self-aware and letting go of that and all of that stuff. And that's why we do this every week, is because, wow, I need it every day. That's why I put it in I use these quotes and I literally write it every single day inside my planner.
You're not alone. I mean, a lot of people deal with I would venture to say almost everybody deals with that inherent self-judgment, whether you have awareness around it or not. And honestly, I think what it comes from is, I've read in several places that they say that your unconscious mind and like the voice in your head that, you know, talks to yourself, that is formulated prior to age 7 by your caregivers. Like, so for most people, that means the voice that you hear in your head is your parents. And most of us who are adults now, you know, had parents a few decades ago, several decades ago, when we didn't have as much understanding about human psychology as we do today. And, or if the understanding, you know, was there, but it was like in academia, like it wasn't on TikTok like it is now. Like parenting in some ways has never been easier, but also has like never been harder. But anyways, the information about like, you know, gentle parenting is a phrase that I think everybody has heard now. Most people don't understand it, but anyways, the awareness is there. And the tools and the resources and the knowledge is accessible to the average American now. And it wasn't before. And so, you know, people were doing the best they had with the tools they had at that time. But what that has led to is a lot of people of our generation and before, you know, were raised, even if there wasn't physical, you know, physical discipline, you know, beating your child was very common. But even if there wasn't that, the verbal, sometimes abuse, sometimes just not quite understanding the implications. I mean, for a very, very long time, and even to some people still today, children were not looked at as tiny humans. You know, they were children. Like I was raised, children are meant to be seen and not heard. So you know, there was definitely a difference in power. Obviously, parents should be in charge, but not to a point of belittlement. But I think a lot of us did experience that at some point. Parents, daycare, babysitters, early childhood teachers. I think there was a lot of that. I'm in charge. You're not. Your thoughts and feelings are not as important. Why are you doing that? Why are you standing up right now? Why? Like a lot of judgment and criticism. And actually, I was listening to an audiobook, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I was listening to that. And he's talking about, through his research, that criticism is one of the things that almost every human gets way too much of. And it really gets in, especially as a child. And so it really gets embedded in our subconscious, and it turns into the way that we talk to ourselves. And so I think that is it. But now we've reached this point, like I said, you know, psychology and the things we've learned about how the human brain works is a lot more widespread than it was then. So not only are we starting to understand what's happening in our, like, you know, our parents didn't know, but now we are old enough and have the awareness that we're starting to understand what's happening in our own mind. So I think this is why we're, you know, this conversation's coming up now, and like we're starting to recognize it. Right. Now, hopefully, we can do better for the next generation.
Let's hope.
And then there'll be more problems.
And then exactly, right?
It's like whack-a-mole, like, you know, people say, I heard somebody tell me, she's like, well, my mom beat me and I wasn't beating my kids, so I thought I was doing better. Well, now they have other issues because what wasn't no longer, physical trauma got translated into emotional trauma. So I'm sure it'll translate somewhere else, but overall it's getting better. I mean,
right. It's progress, not perfection. So, we're evolving. That's the best we can do, right? We're just evolving.
But I think that's where a lot of this, like when bringing it back to the conversation today, this self-awareness, why it can be so difficult to separate that emotion is because so many, I would venture to say the majority of us, have a very critical inner voice.
Very much so. Very much so. We definitely do. So I love this. Self-awareness fuels personal and professional growth. We're going to work to release the judgment around it. And when we have that non-attachment, right? Like when we can be more, what's the word that I'm looking for? We don't attach, like we're not emotionally attached to it. We're not criticizing it, when we're more removed or whatever. Like, how does that impact? I was thinking about, when I'm able to do that, it's really interesting. When I'm able to do that, I get much better results in my work,
absolutely,
in my life, right? Because it's also one of the things as an advocate, how many times have you done something to advocate for your client and your client has said, oh my God, I tried that. Why did it work for you and not for me?
It's the emotion. Yeah, no, I was absolutely about to bring it back to like that. That's the part of, or one aspect of the power of having a professional patient advocate, is because as a neutral third party, you can look at this again. Rational critical thinking cannot be in the brain at the same time as emotional thinking. Emotion is illogical. I mean, it's oil and water. And so when you're advocating for your patient, of course you care about that. I'm not saying that Absolutely. You don't, but you're not in a fight or flight triggered emotional state, hopefully. Right. And if you are, you need to come back every Monday.
Right. Yes.
But so then you can attack the situation calmly, rationally, thinking through the critical steps, communicating effectively. So the same thing then translates to yourself when you're having times of self-reflection. And again, this is self-reflection, not to put yourself on trial. That was the phrase I was trying to find earlier. Not to put yourself on trial, but just pause, reflect on the situation, particularly if the situation had an outcome that wasn't the one that you were aiming for. But also, if you had a really great outcome, that's another wonderful time to pause and have some self-reflection so you can figure out what were the key elements that worked so you can incorporate them next time. But again, you have to be able to separate the emotion to look clearly as if you were a neutral third party, because that's the next step that's going to get you to growth. Right. Because if you're looking at the situation and you're like, well, it is what it is, I can't change it now. No, you can't change it now. But if you don't think something like that isn't gonna happen again, you're fooling yourself and you're setting yourself up for failure. Right. So pause.
Yeah, the universe will continue to bring
back.
It to you.
Oh yeah. There's a reason that lesson was popping up, and it will keep popping up until you learn it.
That's right. That's right. So true.
I have somebody in my personal life who I'm thinking of who keeps dealing with the same kinds of problems over and over and doesn't understand why and gets very frustrated. And it's frustrating to watch from the outside, but you also can't tell another person, especially one who's not in a position where they are, open to the idea that maybe more of what's happening to them is in their control than they think.
Oh boy, that's a whole other call, Kayla.
Life happens to us, but then it's our reaction to it that really creates the situation.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So there was more to that thought, and it just
That's all right.
Derailed, but
that's all right. That's okay. We tend to do that. Listen, this has been a great conversation around self-awareness and releasing ourselves from judgment, self-criticism, like all of the things that we talked about before, and moving into that next step of growth and understanding that when we are able to, look at ourselves without that judgment, we really have lots of opportunities to have greater empathy for others, even like, because it's really easy for me to get attached to a particular idea or belief or thought or whatever this is, and kind of put that out there on other people and judge other folks based on this thing that's in me. And when I'm able to just understand, well, that's just me, and this is just my reality, and releasing it, it's not right or it's not wrong, it allows me to look at other people that way. Right? It allows me to work with my clients from a place of non-judgment, and like that's a whole nother layer of growth, right? That becomes available to us when we release the self-criticism and the judgment. So
yeah. And before we jump off, just want to take a moment to say, okay, yeah, we talked about we need to do this, but how do we do this? And it really, once again, I hate how much it just comes back to you have to have some awareness of how you're talking to yourself. And, maybe if you're in a place where you really struggle with this, maybe it means setting an alarm on your watch or your phone for every hour, just to remind you to actually consciously check in and pay attention to the thoughts of your head and the conversations you're having around, with yourself. Or, making a note or taking this phrase, if this is something that you do really struggle with, take this phrase, write it down, print it out, put it somewhere where you're going to see it. So the next time a situation happens, and it doesn't have to be some big, ugly situation. It could just be like a conversation you were misunderstood, maybe. So next time this situation happens, you can keep that thought of, taking away the emotion, keep it front of mind, so that as you start to have the conversation with yourself and those self-judgments and criticisms start to pop up, you can consciously say, wait, no, pause. We're not doing that. We're going to separate this emotion out and then start thinking through the process again. And it doesn't matter if you have to do that twice or 20 times. That's the doing the work.
Right? Oh my gosh, we're going to run a little bit long here for two reasons. One, I wanted to literally show in my planner on my self-care where I put the quote every single day that we use for Mindset Monday. And so that it's front and center right in front of me all the time so that I'm working on it. That's something that I do. The other thing is this. I want to share this. Somebody shared this with me a long time ago, and it was a game changer for me in my life and my mindset. And maybe it's another quote we need to talk about another time. I don't know. We can see. But they told me, Nicole, you are not responsible for your first thought. You are responsible for your first action. And that was a game changer for me, because it meant that I could have a terrible, terrible thought. And I could say, you know what? That's okay. I don't have to act on that, think on that. It can die right now.
Yeah.
Like that terrible thought happened, and I can move it out of the way, and I can move on with my day and my life. And that was so freeing. So maybe that's something that somebody needed to hear this morning. That
on that note, the thing that works for me, or that really clicked for me when I heard it, was the thoughts that come into your mind are like clouds in the sky. Like, you have no control over them, and it's not worth getting upset about them, because there's nothing you can do about them, but you don't need to feed into them.
You don't have to bring them to life.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about that, to take that a step further though, is not only are you're not responsible for the immediate thought that pops up in your head, because it's coming from your deep unconscious mind, which, as we discussed, is that voice, those thought generations, that is formed before you, roughly by the time you are 7. So you weren't in charge of shit when you were 7, okay? Like, that's not on you. It's not a reflection of who you are. That is just what you were dealing with. But the more that you put your conscious mind in this place of awareness and, authenticity, all the things we talk about here every Monday, your subconscious mind, in your unconscious mind, it's very slow to respond, and it actually responds to emotion as opposed to critical thinking. So you can't just think a thought and then change your subconscious mind. But the more that you have intention around where your conscious mind is and controlling your emotions and all of that, slowly over time, that's the reprogramming of your unconscious mind that we were discussing. But your I can't get this more clear. Your unconscious mind is an emotional being. You cannot tell it to think better. You have to control your conscious mind first and be in a state of calm, create the environment that you want, which takes work. It takes so much work before that noisy ass unconscious mind finally gets the message that we're not doing this anymore. So it's a slog in the beginning. I mean, it's like starting a business, really. Like, it's that same level of like, creating something out of the more you do it, the easier, the ball starts rolling, but you gotta push it hard in the beginning.
Yes. So true. So true. So true. Oh my gosh, Kayla, thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Sunday, not a Monday. But the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us for Mindset Monday. We will be back here next week with, and I don't even know, do you have the pillars in front of you? I did see it earlier. No. It is. Let's do this. There we go. Because I wanted to do a live goodbye and finish out today's session. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation, even just half as much as we enjoyed having it. Really, really good stuff. So watch the platform. We're going to do some conversations around this. Get this in front of yourself. Make sure that you're attention to that conscious mind and what you're saying to yourself. So that's going to be a wrap for this Mindset Monday. Kayla and I are so grateful that you guys can continue to hang out with us on Mondays. And join us next Monday. We're going to be talking about intentionality, and we've got a fantastic quote around that. But we hope today's quote on self-awareness has empowered you and your work and your personal life for the week. So be sure to share in the comments how you're applying it, and have a great week, guys. We'll see you later. Bye.